You can't be Nigerian, you're white. Okay, so now your papa own Nigeria happy. So this 25 years where I spent for Lagos don't make me Nigerian happy.
If you had to have a different type of ethnicity that's clearly not in your bloodstream, what would you want?
Dude, Nigeria, 100%.
Nigeria?
How come?
I don't know. I just feel like all the Nigerian people I meet are really smart and really athletic, and I need some of that.
Is that where all the
Why was that weird? You guys all got quiet. Why is that weird?
I don't know that you knew that many Nigerians besides the UFC fighters.
I'm a Nigerian prince. What are you gonna do? Send me 1,500. I got you.
Something, yo. Explain something.
That was Mr. Lee in his room. Emailing you.
Dominicans doing it. I'm sorry.
This could be debatable, but the Nigerians are the most smartest people on the planet.
Yeah, I believe it.
I promise you. There's nobody more smarter than a Nigerian.
Respect that.
Now, of course, there's a few bad apples that came out. You know what I'm saying?
They smart too, though.
No, they extremely smart.
Yeah, they smart.
They just put their intelligence all in the wrong place.
Right.
If they would have geared that towards something more, positive and productive,
right.
Because the ones that did, there's more billionaires being made in Nigeria than anywhere in the world on an annual basis.
My friends took that email.
They make all the places hard.
All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining me today. I am your man, Corp J, and I'm excited that you all are here today. I'm truly, truly glad to be having this conversation because it's a conversation that I think is often overlooked as it relates to Nigerians and their accomplishments all over the world. I am going to be dealing with a recent interview that Akon had on Drink Champs. And on that interview, Akon said this, that the most smartest people on the planet are Nigerians. And he even followed up with, there's no one smarter than a Nigerian. Now, I want to talk about that because that is something that is not a nuance. That is not a nuanced statement. It is something that many people know of Nigerians. As a matter of fact, before Afrobeats became what it is today, before Nigerians were known for their success with the entertainment industry, what Nigerians were really known for was that they were very smart. People who have come in contact with Nigerians will attest to this and have attested to this over the years. This is what people who know of Nigerians. And I want to focus on that because I want to give you more insight to this. Because I am also going to address the elephant in the room with my critics or the critics of Nigerians who say things like, if they're so smart, then why are they not fixing their country? Okay, so I'm going to address that because I think that is a key point that I'm going to address in this video. But before we do all of that, let's talk about why a person like Akon will say such thing. Because Akon is from Senegal. I mean, he was born in St. Louis, Missouri, but his parents are from Senegal. And so what would make a brother from Senegal say that? Because Akon knows. See, Akon has had a front row seat with dealing with Nigerians. Akon works with Nigerians. And so he knows. Akon, like many people in prominent positions, know of this when it comes to Nigerians. You see, that's what we're going to deal with. We're going to deal with people in prominent positions. We're not going to deal with the bottom feeders who like to focus on the 0.001, the ones who can't wait to turn on the news. And every time there is a story about our 0.001 Nigerians, they're tuned into that. We're not going to focus on those people, but I am going to address their question as it relates to why if they are so smart, if Nigerians are so smart, then why are they not fixing their country? I am going to address that. But more importantly, I'm going to focus on what 99% of people and also the small percentage of people who are in prominent positions know about Nigerians. I'm talking about people like Akon. I'm talking about Chinese, people who like Chinese who are in prominent positions, right? Whether they are professors at colleges, whether they are tech entrepreneurs in tech, whether they are business owners, whether they are bankers, investment bankers, these people know. So, Asians, we're talking about Chinese. We're going to talk about the Indians. Indians in prominent positions, whether they're doctors, whether they are restaurant owners, whether they own businesses, these ones also know. White folks who are in the United States, or also in England or in Canada, in prominent positions, these ones know. That's why you will never hear any of these rhetoric from none of these people. You will never hear any of these types of rhetoric from none of these people. The people that the news outlets, news in the West, like to kind of feed into are the bottom feeders, the ones that don't have any power in society. They can't change anything. They don't have any political power or political strength. They don't have any business power. These are the ones that they like to feed into because these are your internet people. So we're not going to deal with that, right? Now, when Akon made that statement, it's a statement that is echoed, as I mentioned, by people within the great status of society who see Nigerians every day. And I want you to take a listen to another person who echoed the same thing, Joe Rogan, who is obviously a very popular podcaster out here on these YouTube streets. I want you to take a listen to what he said about Nigerians also, and I'll be back.
First of all, what is it about Nigerians that do so well in this country? That's one of the things. If you look at like Nigerian immigrants, like successful ratios of different immigration groups, Nigerians in particular are extraordinarily successful upon immigrating to America.
Yeah, I think it's a family thing. It's like when our families decide and we get the opportunity to move to a better place.
Right.
The thing is that the whole persona is we're going to be able to sustain this forever. So my kids are not going to just play around in sports because that's not guaranteed.
Right.
What is guaranteed is the fact that you're going to go to school and you're going to become a doctor because you're going to get a job anywhere in the world that you want. That's why a majority of them are doctors.
Right.
Majority of them doctors, engineers, because these are jobs that high demand jobs. You're always going to get a job anywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's all we push. You're going to be a doctor or you're going to be an engineer. None of them are saying you're going to be a professional athlete. My parents, hell no. They didn't care for that. Like, I lied to them the first couple of years that I was wrestling. I didn't tell them that. My brother is a doctor in pharmacy in Dallas. My little brother, could have gotten the NFL. He was a stellar football player. Played at University of Houston and University of Arizona. My sister now is in college. She's in nursing school in college. Like, that's just what we push. We want you to get a job that you can provide for your family forever.
Yeah, they remind me of Koreans in a lot of ways. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, super hardworking and appreciate once they've gotten to a place like America where there really is no ceiling on the possibility. You could do anything you want once you get here if you work hard.
Absolutely.
So that's Joe Rogan. I also want you to take a listen to Professor Patrick Lumumba, whom I have a great respect for. And I think many people in Africa also have a great deal of respect for. I want you to hear what he said about Nigerians. And I want you to take a listen to his intensity and the look in his eyes when he talks about Nigerians in this way.
A friend of mine once told me that if you go to any part of the world and you do not find a Nigerian, leave that place. Because there is nothing to do there. If you want the best engineers in the continent, they are Nigerians. If you want the best doctors, they are Nigerians. If you want good lawyers, they are Nigerians. If you want good people, they are Nigerians. And I dare say that as long as Nigeria is not at ease, Africa will never be at ease.
Okay. So people within prominent status, smart people, know this about Nigerians. And Nigerians are not without faults. Okay, so I'm not up here trying to blow smokes out here. Nigerians have some things they need to work on. Nigerians, like many other communities, have issues in their communities. But that's not what we're here to address. Because what I want to talk to, especially in this video, is why are Nigerians, of all the black groups in the United States or in Africa, why are the Nigerians the only one that people are talking about as it relates to Either they're the smartest people as it relates to they're intelligent. You heard that clip that I played at the beginning of this video where that Asian individual said he wants to be a Nigerian because all the Nigerians he meets are either smart or athletically built. These are things that people know of Nigerians, people who know of Nigerians. But why Nigerians though? I'm going to tell you this because I have often mentioned this in other videos, and I want to talk to those who are critics of Nigerians. And I want to tell you why it should excite you that Nigerians are breaking the chains and breaking the barrier that has been put before black people. What do I mean by this? For a long time, and during the slave era, when our ancestors were enslaved, one of the biggest things that has plagued black people, and one of the biggest conquest of white people who enslaved our ancestors back in the days, their biggest conquest wasn't the snatching of Africans from their villages. That was not the biggest conquest. Their biggest conquest was not even subduing Africans with whips and beating them down or defaming them whenever they tried to escape. That was not the biggest conquest. Their biggest conquest was also not to steal Africans from their wives and rape their wives and all of that. That was not even their biggest conquest. Their biggest conquest over the slaves that they got was the destruction of the mind of the Negro man and the Negro woman. The biggest conquest that white folks have ever had over black people, even today, is the tearing and the destruction of the mind. And here's why I say, a man named Willie Lynch is today credited for coming up with the strategy, the divide and conquer strategy, which was used to destroy the slaves. It was used to defeat the male slave and the female slaves. You see, before Willie Lynch came into existence, before his strategy was put in forth, when the slaves were brought into the Americas, we're going to deal with the Americas here. For a long time, the slaves were rebellious. They tried to escape every chance they got. They tried to escape. They were very united. They refused to make this place their land. And it was a problem for the slave masters. It was a problem because every single time they turned around, there was a slave trying to escape, trying to go back to Africa, trying to go back to their motherland, trying to grab their families and trying to escape. And each time, over and over again, the slaves were caught and they were beaten. They were made example of. It happened. It was such a problem that the white slave masters didn't know what to do about it until Willie Lynch came up with an idea to divide and conquer. And his idea was strictly to break down the Negro man, to break him down to where he was less than his worth. Now, what did he do? They began to separate slaves. They began to snatch families up. They will separate wives from husbands, children from mothers. This is how they would do it. They began to devise ways, another strategy called the house Negro and the field Negro. So they would take a few slaves and put them in the house to work in the house, to separate them from their loved ones in the field. And they gave a different treatment to the ones in the house from the ones in the field. So the ones in the house, over the years, began having what's called a superiority complex, where they saw themselves close and aligned themselves to the white masters. And over the years, they began to really distance themselves from the ones in the field, which is where you got the term, the house Negro and the field Negro. It's something that plagues the black community today. That was the biggest accomplishment for white people, is to destroy the mind of black people to where they don't feel a value of themselves. And that is the biggest thing that can destroy anyone. You see, beyond you taking a person's wealth, beyond you beating a person down, whether physically or mentally, beyond you taking a person's goods and worldly goods or whatever they've worked for in life, beyond all of that, the one thing that you can do to destroy a person is to take the ability to believe in themselves. If you take that away from someone, it doesn't matter what I tell you, you're not going to see yourself as valuable. If you see a beautiful woman and she's got all the curves in the world and she's so attractive, drop dead gorgeous, if she doesn't believe that she's attractive, if she doesn't believe that within herself, there's no amount of praises you're going to give her that will make her truly value who she is and her body. The mind is the key to any human being. Take away the mind, you take away everything else from him. This is what they did with black people. This is what black people have also been subjugated in. They've been under that type of mental breakdown for years. And a lot of black folks, unfortunately, have not allowed themselves to evolve out of this. Now, here's where I'm going with this story. Because that is something that plagued black folks, even the ones that were colonized in Africa. When the British and the French came to Africa to colonize, the same strategy was used over there to destroy the minds of most black people. Same ones here. So black folks are plagued with this. Now here is where I'm going with this. For the first time, we're seeing black people emerging out of the ashes that they were put in by their slave masters and also the descendants of their slave masters for years. They're not just doing it in entertainment. We're seeing Nigerians breaking barriers in education. We're seeing Nigerians in politics. We're seeing Nigerians as doctors. We're seeing Nigerians as engineers. We're seeing Nigerians breaking barriers. Do you know how hard it is to be part of a race who for years have been told you are nothing? Who for years you've been told your skin color is a problem by those who are not black? Who've been told for years? Do you know how hard it is for someone who has been beat down like that to have the will to get up and do something different? Do you know how hard it is? It is one thing to work, but beyond working is tell your mind to work. Let me repeat that again. It is one thing to do the work, but beyond that is to tell your mind to get up and do the work. That telling of your mind to get up and do the work is what they broke down in us through our ancestors that have been passed on for years. Which is why the emergence of Nigerians succeeding all over the world is troublesome for a lot of people. I've said this so many times that I don't think people are getting it. And here is the part that is very bothersome, is that the critics of Nigerians who are black, who are Nigerians, who are also non-Nigerians, who are black, are doing the work of their enslaved people when they attacked one of their own who are emerging out of the ashes to represent the black race the way they are. If you are a critic of Nigerian, understand that you're an extension of your slave master. If you are a critic of these people coming up because you are either jealous, understand it's a self-hate that you are exuding out of yourself. You are an extension of your slave master. You are the house Negro who have been in the house so much and you think somehow you're part of the house, but nonetheless, you're still a slave. See, when the slaves were put in the house, it didn't matter if they worked in the house. They were still slaves. They still had shackles. They were still beaten when they got out of hand. They were still subjugated by the white masters. It didn't matter. All they did was try to create a divide between the ones in the house and the ones on the field, to create a divide that have plagued us. Understand this, that if you are a person who takes the pride to attack Nigerians, you are a seed of your slave masters. You're not one of us. Your skin color doesn't represent us. Because whether it's Nigerians today or whether it is people from Senegal tomorrow, or whether it's African Americans tomorrow, it doesn't matter. If you're black, we ought to celebrate your achievement, period. Because we're all one in this. And Nigerians are breaking the shackles, which is why this is troublesome from the West. Understand if you're Nigerian, you have a bullseye behind your back. Understand you have a bullseye behind your back. Because while we are celebrating, while I am on my channel using my platform to elevate the success of Nigerian, because I see what is going on here. Understand that those who want to see us subjugated, who have worked so hard for centuries to break our mind down, they don't like the fact that in spite of all of that, we're emerging to become something much more than that. And we're doing it without a bone thrown at us. We're doing it without any shortcut given to us. We're doing it as a collective. As a collective, let me talk about Nigerian success as a collective. I'm going to focus on Nigerians in the West, here in the United States. As a collective, Nigerians are changing the political landscape. Because as a collective, Nigerians are breaking these barriers. Nigerians are in politics. Just last midterm election alone in the United States, 8 Nigerians were elected into public office in the United States in the Biden administration. 8 Nigerian Americans, and they are not just the first ones in politics. There are other Nigerian Americans that were represented in politics. Nigerians are widely known in the West as overachievers and a symbol of excellence. So let me address now the critics who say, why don't you go and do it in your country? Okay. These same critics will often use, and I've heard some of these rhetorics, they will often use other countries to judge, and even Nigerians. I'm talking about Nigerian critics now. We're not just talking about non-Nigerians now, because these critics are both Nigerians who love to dump on their countries, who are unintelligent, and the ones that are non-Nigerians who are black, who love to dump on them. Now, what they say is this, and they like to use China, because everyone, China. And like to use all this other country. And they say, why don't you do it in your own country if you're so smart? Now, let's talk about the comparison with China, for example, because China is a very significant part of this whole equation, right? You know how old China is? China is almost 4,000 years old. China's dynasty and civilization has been around longer than the US and the British Empire put together. China is not a spring chicken. China has been here for almost 4,000 years. They've been in existence. But they only woke up 30 years ago. See, what you're seeing in China right now, that whole development you're seeing only occurred 30 years ago in China. So they say the same thing about Chinese folks. See, in this country, there was a time when Chinese were excluded in this country for like 12 years. They call it the Chinese Exclusion Act that was put in this country. Because a lot of people saw Chinese people as nuisance. They didn't like them, but they also revered them because they were smart, they were intelligent, they were building businesses here. The same rhetoric you heard about these same people who are being respected today. Same rhetoric you hear about Nigerians, same rhetoric you hear about Chinese folks. They were excluded from coming to the United States. And that had to do a lot with political reasoning too. But they were excluded. Their Chinese restaurants were destroyed and they were banned from coming to the United States for 12 years. These same people just woke up 30 years ago. They've been existing for almost 4,000 years. Don't compare Nigeria and China together. Okay? Let's talk about India. Indians are also another one. They're very smart. They've always been smart, just like Chinese folks have always been smart. They also equally just woke up 30 years ago. You know how old India is? India also has been existing for years. The region has also been existing for 1,000 years. Modern India has been around for about 140 years. They just woke up 30 years ago. And they have a population of 1-point-something billion people on the planet. Now, what's the point I'm trying to go over here? There's something that obviously inspired, that aligned when it comes to Chinese and Indian, and that is purpose meeting will and meeting skills. You see, with Chinese and Indians, they've always had the skills in terms of intelligence, either in mathematics, either in science. They've always been innate with that. And they've always had the will to build a country. It took them years and a while. It wasn't until it aligned with purpose that we saw India come out of the poverty state that we've always known India to be in just 30 years ago. Same thing with China. Chinese people have always been great and smart. They didn't just get their smarts today. They've always had that in them. They've always been overachievers. They've always been hardworking. They've always put in their best. But it wasn't until will aligned with skills that aligned with purpose that caused China to be the way it is today. See, China used to also have a corruption problem. Most of you don't know this. Corruption in China was so huge that it makes Nigerian corruption make it significant. Most of you don't know this because they hide it. For a long time, China was really shielded from the world. And for most part right now, they still are. But what we know of China today, Chinese people have always been very shielded and guarded. There's always been a wall that most people didn't know what was going on in that whole region. But if you read articles and you learn about the history of China, corruption is a big thing that plagues that country, which is why the current president of China, one of his key things that he vowed to do was eradicate corruption. As a matter of fact, a lot of the policies that he puts in place deals with corruption in China. In China, if you wanted anything, you couldn't get it without paying money for it. And for a large part, they still do that under the table. But this current administration makes sure, because he hates that about his country. Okay, so let's talk about Nigeria. There's a will and there's a skill. The same thing we've seen with Chinese and the Indians. It's only a matter of time that the will and the skill will align with purpose. See, Nigeria is only 63 years old. So to compare Nigeria to China and India, who are far older and whom only have just adopted this thing recently, it shows lack of intelligence. It shows lack of intelligence. But what you should be you should be looking at is the will of the people and the skills that people possess. These are the things that causes people to come out of poverty. This is the one thing that the white slave owners wanted to break down, and they succeeded in breaking down when it comes to black people. Is to break their will and obviously make sure they didn't have the skills, but break their mind down. Nigerians have emerged out of this, and this is troublesome. This is problematic to a lot of white folks in the white community, those who like to see black folks subjugated. And we're not talking about the ones that love black people and they like to see us also elevated and seen. We're not talking about those population. We're talking about the population in their population that like to see black folks under subjugation. These ones are not happy that with all of the negative press against Nigerians, these ones have found a way to believe in themselves. That is the key part right here. That is the breakthrough more than anything else. See, when you're talking about buildings, when you're talking about fine architecture, when you're talking about roads and all of that, these things are secondary. They will naturally happen. But the thing that you need to focus on is, do people have the will and the skills to move themselves out of poverty? If you say yes to that, the other stuff is just a matter of time, which is why it was only a matter of time for India and China to align with purpose, to build their country the way they did, even after they've been around for years and thousands of years. So every Nigerian, including myself, have bought into this, that we can be and do everything and do anything we want to do. We have the smartness in us, which is what I call the Nigerian factor. We have the greatness in us, which is based on the fact that if you're born Nigerian, there's something in you that says that you're going to work hard. You're going to be the best you can be. You're going to overachieve out here. It is not just something that a few of us have. It's something that's innate with most of us. That is why a guy like Akon can make a statement like that. That is why you'll find a lot of people talk about Nigerians and their resiliency and their success and their smartness everywhere. That is why to the critics that say, why don't you do it in your country? It's only a matter of time that they're going to do it in their country, because it took all these other countries that long to get it right, even though they've been around for years. It's only a matter of time. that you're going to see the same Nigerians command the same respect that you're seeing with all these other communities. Let's even look for one more. Let me use one more. The Jewish community. The Jewish community is one that we can look at and use as a great example to what I'm just talking about. See, there was a time in this country also that the Jewish community, the community was hated. I remember when I lived in New York. I remember going to Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island in New York, and hearing the story and seeing also how the Jews who migrated into the United States, how they were treated when they came through Statue of Liberty, through Staten Island. I remember watching and seeing the story of the Jewish community. It wasn't a pleasant one. They didn't treat them well. The white folks in this country didn't treat the Jewish folks right. You see, some of you like to think that Jewish people are white. They're not white. The white folks, they didn't treat them right. This country was hostile. It was hostile to them. They didn't treat them right. But these people were always smart because there was something in them that was innate. There was something in them that was a spirit of resiliency. There was something in them that was a giant spirit that was always in this Jewish people. And it was only a matter of time that their will and their skills aligned with their purpose. And that's changed the entire trajectory of the Jewish community. To today, most people would like to have Jewish lawyers because they say they're smart. They've always been smart. Most people would like to align with Jewish folks because they think that they've always been that way. It takes time. It's only a matter of time. So people who know this, that's only a matter of time for these Nigerians who are now coming up in the ranks, for them to change their trajectory as it relates to their country, as it relates to their positioning in the West, as it relates to their position in the world. It's only a matter of time. Because the one thing that you need to get, if you're going to get anything, you need to get the zeal, the will, and the skills. And if you can break through, especially for black folks who have been subjugated for years, who have been put in chains for years, if you can convince your mind to get up, and if you could break through out of that chains and shackles, which Nigerians have clearly done, they've broken out of that mindset of defeatist mentality. They've broken out of that mindset of, I can't do this thing. I need someone's help. I need a handout. They don't need that. They've broken out of that mindset. And they've now convinced themselves that they can do and achieve anything. That is the breakthrough point. Because it isn't that easy for you to break away from your chains and say, I am going to get up off this place and I'm going to do something. That mindset is not easy to overcome. And to overcome that and do for yourself is an achievement on its own. And to those who are Nigerians, I'm going to tell you this. Continue to win like you've always been doing. I mean, Nigerians were doing this before I even showed up. They don't need me to tell them. Nigerians are bought into what I'm talking about. Continue to win. Continue to excel because you're making your community proud. I know I'm making my community proud and I'm making an impact on the community. I'm glad to do it. And I'm glad to be a Nigerian. So thank you all for watching. Please like the video, share the content, and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Varje gång jag bak på det, jag tänker vilket kap jag gjort. Jag skulle gå tillbaks i tid, göra om allt igen och förstå. Ser det som ett allt, det är det jag vill wifa. De här yardis, de vill ju bara dra ner oss. Men du är fett och vanlig, på det jag lägger all min tid.